Welcome back everyone to another video, and today we are going over the entire NFC East and talking about each team and giving a record prediction, breaking down certain players and all kinds of stuff like that for the upcoming season. Now, if you're going to enjoy today's video and you like the NFL, then make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. It is free and would really help me out. We are closing on 700 subscribers on the road to 1,000, so I would appreciate all the support there. But starting off today with the Commanders, last season was I don't want to say terrible, but it wasn't much better than terrible. Sam Howell was pretty underwhelming. He threw for a lot of yards, but a lot of times he just made some very awful mistakes. And maybe if you didn't get that high of a draft pick, you could maybe justify sticking it out one more year with them. But when you get the second overall pick and Jaden Daniels on the board, it makes sense to move on from Sam Howell and get hopefully your franchise quarterback. Just as a brief recap for 2023 though, Howell threw for 3,946 yards, 21 touchdowns, but 21 interceptions. And again, in a season where you're throwing for 21 touchdowns, but almost the same amount of interceptions, it's not good. I mean, you had the same amount of touchdowns and interceptions. I shouldn't have to talk much more about that. It's pretty self-explanatory. Not good. Not what you want to see. Again, he was a rookie, so it happens, I guess. Or wait, was this his second year? No, yeah, he was a rookie, so it happens. But again, there's no justifying keeping him on that team when you can get a top quarterback in the draft. Rushing wise though, Brian Robinson Jr. 733 yards and 5 touchdowns. I think he's actually a pretty underrated running back, and I am actually pretty excited about him heading into this season for them. Antonio Gibson had 265 on the ground with 1 touchdown, but he's not on the team anymore anyways. He's in New England, so Brian Robinson Jr., at least in this rushing category, is the only relevant running back going into this season. And then receiving wise, Terry McLaurin 1,002 yards with 4 touchdowns on the season. Curtis Samuel with 613 and 4 touchdowns, although he's not on the roster anymore. And Jahan Dotson with 518 yards and 4 touchdowns, but now he's not on the roster anymore. And actually, as of literally 10 minutes ago, as I was setting up to record this video, the Eagles traded a a third round pick, a fifth and multiple sevenths for Jahan Dotson. So an in-division trade. Those are fairly rare, and it's an interesting move this close to the season. I guess Washington just really didn't like what they saw from their wide receiver 2 at that point in time, or at this point in time, I guess. I'd said in previous videos, though, that Dotson was very underwhelming. He was not really lighting it up, and now this new coaching staff, they came in there, and they didn't really have much to say about him. They're just kind of like, yeah, he's there. He's not really on their priorities. So now it's very clear he was not on their priority list because he's now not on the team. So very interesting, though, to make that big of a roster move this close to the season with a rookie quarterback. Again, I don't know. It's interesting to say the least. Antonio Gibson also had 389 yards and 2 touchdowns receiving, and then Brian Robinson Jr. also had 368 and 4 touchdowns receiving. Again, Robinson, very underrated. He's good in the receiving game and great as a rusher, but I feel like he's actually very underrated in the receiving game. And then defensively, Montez Sweat gets traded midway through the season to the Chicago Bears, and then you also have Emmanuel Forbes, who is your rookie corner, and he didn't really have a great year. I don't want to say it was a bad year per se, but I think you would have liked to see more. And at this point now, going into 2024, I don't know what their perception around him really is at this point. I know that there was a picture not too long ago, or maybe a month ago, of him looking super, super skinny, but I feel like that's kind of how he's played in the past anyways. I don't think it's a crazy transformation. It's definitely skinny compared to other NFL players, but I don't think it was anything to freak out about. I think just really, if we're going to be concerned about anything, it's his on the field play at the moment. So hopefully it's a big year too, but again, I'm not really sure what to expect there from him. Cameron Curl last year was pretty good for them, 115 total tackles, but this defense is going to look much different this year. They brought in quite a few guys, but also the biggest thing is they hired Dan Quinn, their head coach, who is very defensive minded. And so coming over to the depth chart, as of right now, you have Jaden Daniels, Brian Robinson Jr., Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson. Well, it hasn't factored in that he's gone yet, so not him. De'Ami Brown, and then Zach Ertz for tight end. The O-line is Brandon Coleman, Nick oh my gosh, I'm going to ruin this name. Nick Allegretti, Tyler Biadasz, Sam Cosmi, and Andrew Wiley. I'm sorry. Now, the biggest thing for me right now, and again, going to this video until 10 minutes ago, this wasn't really going to be a big talking point for me, but now it's what wide receiver is going to step up, because I'm not going to lie. Going into this, I was like, yeah, I'm going to mention, Jahan Dotson being a bit underwhelming, but I still think, he can still be a capable receiver, but hopefully someone else steps up in case he isn't. Well, now there isn't a in case he isn't. He's not on the roster anymore. Someone has to step up, whether that's the rookie Luke McCaffrey, whether Jamison Crowder makes his way up to the roster, or whether it's Martavis Bryant, who has not played a game in the NFL in 6 years. I don't know who it's going to be, but someone's got to fill that space, because even though he has been underwhelming, Jahan Dotson, he still was a wide receiver too, and he was still getting like 500 yards on the season. So you have to replace that production, and you have to replace it 2 weeks before the season starts, which is so weird for me. I guess they just could not pass up a third-round pick for him, which, I mean, if that's the best you could get for him, then yeah, go for it. But why make that move right now? Like, it's just a little weird to me. To make that move, though, you would have to think the coaching staff would be confident enough in the guys in that wide receiver room to step in there, you would think. So I don't really know. I think at the very least, it's still very surprising to do it this late in the offseason. But yeah, Dotson's not on the roster. And so other than him, though, Jaden Daniels is the big talking point, of course, second overall pick in the draft. And I've liked what I've seen from him in preseason. He's been really, really good. I think the offense is going to fit him very well. When you have Cliff Kingsbury in there for offensive coordinator, and it's like this kind of RPO system. From what we've seen in preseason, and I just want to preface this by saying that throughout this video, whenever not even just this video, whenever I mention preseason in general and I bring up the good things, don't take that as in me saying they're going to be good because they were good in preseason. I'm just trying to use preseason as a reference point if that's all we have in the context of the player, if that makes sense. So I know that, yes, it doesn't matter if it's in preseason, but would you rather see good things in preseason or rather see bad things in preseason? You'd rather get the bad things out of the way in preseason, but you'd still rather the player be good in preseason and then translate that to that, the actual, like week one. So for me, Jaden Daniels being able to run that offense pretty smoothly already in preseason is a good sign. While, yes, when he gets to, week one, week two, week three, and so on, the defenses will be much different and they'll be much more aggressive and much better. Just him being able to be comfortable in the offense is a big deal, because that can be something that really holds back rookie quarterbacks. I think part of the reason Bryce Young struggled last year was he was not comfortable in that offense, and he underperformed on his own, and he had bad O-line, all that kind of stuff, but he did not do well in that offense. And so I think a lot of times when a quarterback is a great scheme fit, it can be better sometimes than a quarterback that's more talented but in a terrible scheme on a different team. I think sometimes the scheme really does make a huge difference. So to have one that really complements Jaden Daniels' skill set, like his rushing ability, I think it's going to go a long way with this team. Now, when I say that, though, when I say long way with this team, I don't mean that that's going to translate to wins automatically, because I think this team is going to struggle this year. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But I do think there's a lot of things you can look for this year to point toward and get really excited for next season if everything goes to plan. Now, defensively, and before I get to the point I just made on offense, we'll circle back around to that. But defensively, someone that I want to kind of focus on a lot here that I've mentioned in past videos is Frankie Louvu. He's from the Panthers. I am not trying to be biased at all, but this is someone that can seriously fly all over the field. He will get tackles for loss. He will pressure the quarterback. He will blow up the run. He will, drop back into coverage, and he can get an interception. He can really do it all. I'm not going to say he does it all at like the highest level, but he is someone you can count on to fly around the field and make plays. And I understand him wanting to leave Carolina to play in this Dan Quinn defense, because I think this defense is going to look a lot different this year. Again, I don't think it's going to translate to a lot of wins. I don't think this is going to be some like 10-win team. But when you're at the stage that this team is, when you're trying to rebuild and, see certain things and, see what direction to take the team as far as, we have a hole here, let's do this, move this guy. It's all kind of new, especially with the coaching. So I think Frankie Louvu can be a piece that they point to as like, yeah, we need either more guys like that, or we need to make sure we re-sign him, because he is seriously someone that will light up on this defense. I'm definitely a believer in that. On the same topic of the Panthers, though, Jeremy Chin also came over from Carolina. Not sure what to expect from him. He was phenomenal his rookie season in Carolina, but then after that, he kind of fell off a little bit. He's really good as like that kind of hybrid linebacker safety role. He isn't great in coverage. Not sure how they're going to utilize him, but again, if he's good, I do trust that Dan Quinn will find a way to do that. So Yeah, two former Panthers there. I want to give a little bit of insight on just because I am very familiar with them, being a Panthers fan. But yeah, if you're a Commanders fan, I hope you're pretty excited about Frankie Louisville because he's someone that I wish Carolina would have tried harder to keep in Carolina. Now, besides them, you add Bobby Wagner, who again is not young by any means, but like old Bobby Wagner is still a serviceable player. I think it's so exciting to get him in there. So again, that's good for linebackers as well. Benjamin St-Juste, I'm going to be honest, I don't totally know how the Commanders fans feel about this guy because sometimes I see people liking him and other times I see people like kind of trashing him. So I'm not sure. If you're a Commanders fan, then let me know down below what you think of him because I couldn't really get a fair like fan base opinion on him. He's just someone to watch for me. But again, like I mentioned before, Emmanuel Forbes, currently not the starter. You drafted him first round last year, a pick before Christian Gonzalez. So you would hope he really kind of lights up this year, turns around a little bit, but I don't know. Someone else I want to talk about, though, is Johnny Newton, the second string right defensive tackle as of right now. He is someone that I think really fell in the draft, and I want to say I made a video, or at least I was thinking of making a video at one point, on the Dan Quinn kind of like new era and the draft picks that were made this past year in Washington. And Newton being one of them that like is really exciting because he's a good player and he fell in the draft. You got a lot of really good value for where you got him. So hopefully he can be really good. Again, not a starter as of right now, but you still have Jonathan Allen, Jerron Payne on that D line, which is definitely solid. So again, for me, this Washington defense, I think you have a bit of a questionable secondary to say the least. Other than that, though, I think your linebacker core is definitely going to be fun to watch at the very least. And D-line I think is solid. So for me, it's really that secondary that has a lot to prove, and it's because of question marks like Jeremy Chin. It's question marks like Emmanuel Forbes. Not sure how I feel about Mike Sandstrom either. So again, it's a lot to evaluate this year. Now I'm going to give a list of players right now that are just some guys to watch. I'm trying to focus more on like either guys that are best at the league in their positions, or whether they're just like newcomers or rookies and things like that. So if you ever see me do one of these and there's not like a star player on it, like a solid guy like Keenan Allen or something, and he's not on it, I'm not saying he's a bad player. He's just not someone I'm focusing on. So for Washington, if there's anyone left off, just know that's why. It's not because I think they're a bad player. But to get into it, we have a few guys to really talk about here, and one of which, like I said before, is going to be Jahan Dotson, and I've had to take him off the players because he's not on the roster anymore. And I wanted to go ahead and throw on Luke McCaffrey where he would have been. We're going to start at the bottom on offense. Luke McCaffrey is someone that I talked about in my Jaden Daniels video a few months ago because I think he's someone that can step up and really surprise some people. And now that Dotson is gone, I really see that being the case because all of a sudden, him having to fight through multiple receivers and make a huge impact to get some minutes, coaches will be looking around for who's going to step in and fill that production. So I think he can definitely earn a spot on the starting roster. Whether he's good enough, I don't know that, but I think the opportunity will definitely be there for him. And then for tight end, Ben Sinnott, again, is someone I wanted to name because he's a very good vertical threat. He's a good pass-catching tight end. He's someone that's honestly a sleeper pick for me to be one of those more surprising rookies on offense this year. I think he's great. I think he's shown some good plays in camp. I think as the season goes on, he can get to be really, really good. Again, Zach Ertz is currently the starter, but Ben Sinnott is younger. I think he could be the better pass catcher at this point in his career. So he's definitely someone to watch. That's why I have the player to watch on him. And as for Austin Eckler, I don't know what to really expect from him at this point in his career. You're not getting prime Austin Eckler, first off. You're not getting the guy that can do it all in the rushing and receiving game. I think when you get in within like 15 yards of the end zone, he's someone that could turn those little dump-offs into some receiving touchdowns. But he's not someone I'm going to count on to make a huge impact. I really think Brian Robinson Jr. is quite underrated, and he can still be very good for this team. I think he will be very good for this team. Then, of course, Jaden Daniels, I get the start to. I think he can absolutely be a star on this team in his first year. I think the offense is going to run through him in this RPO system, and I think they have plenty of belief in him. They have plenty of confidence in him. I love what I've seen from him so far, and so, again, I give him the star. And then defensively, give Emmanuel Forbes the eyes. I already kind of talked about him. And same with Jeremy Chin. Again, two guys to watch. Both are some question marks to me. I'm not going to give him the unproven. You could probably give the unproven to Emmanuel Forbes, but I still feel like he's still a guy to watch. I think he has the talent. It just really has to come together for him. And I'm really giving the defensive guys, same with Mike Sandstrom, the kind of benefit of the doubt here, because in this Dan Quinn defense, I think a lot of these guys that might not have been great can be quite good, like guys that struggled, whether that's Emmanuel Forbes or Jeremy Chin. Obviously, Sancho being in his first season, not sure what to expect totally there, but again, they have him as a starter, so maybe he's someone that's going to really shine in year one. And then Frankie Louva I gave the star to. Again, I'm really, really high on him. I do think he's someone that can be very underrated and overlooked, but I think he'll be quite the force in this Dan Quinn defense, to be honest with you. And so then coming back over to the depth chart, now I've done this for every single team, but just to make it really, really easy to see what I'm kind of thinking for offense and defense, I made a little chart. And for Washington, I have the offense's, kind of potential really high up there. And I do think this can be a really good offense. I think it requires Jaden Daniels really shining in year one, which I think is definitely on the table. I think it requires Brad Robinson Jr. kind of doing a little bit of everything in the rushing and receiving game. Terry McLaurin doing his thing. Ben Sinnott maybe stepped up in there for tight end, along with, kind of Zach Ertz, and just kind of giving some help there at tight end. But then also someone stepping up to replace Jahan Dotson. And even if Jahan Dotson was still on this roster, I would still be saying Jahan Dotson to step up and make it, an impact. Like, someone has to kind of increase that production at wide receiver. I think it's surprising to take away Dotson at this point, but to do that this close to the season, you would do that with a, either a really good offer or a really good reason to get rid of him. So someone's got to step up in there. I think the offense can be great. The defense I do have pretty low, because despite how I think that they will be better in this Dan Quinn defense, I think there's still a lot to evaluate. There's a lot to evaluate at the secondary. Getting Bobby Wagner is not a long-term answer at linebacker. The D-line can still be improved while being solid. So I think there's still a lot of question marks there. I think they will definitely struggle against some of those, even just divisional opponents like the Eagles and Cowboys that just love to air the ball out. So, again, they're going to get tested. They're going to get burnt, but I think they're also going to show a lot of flashes. It's just about finding who to build around, what guys are going to step up on this offense and defense. And, again, Washington, the bars, it's pretty different than each other for offense and defense. And so then the final thing for me is just the schedule. And you're in a tough division. I think you can definitely split with the Giants, but again, you have the Cowboys twice and the Eagles twice. Very tough games. I think if you steal one off either of them, it would be a huge statement win. Out of divisional opponents, you have to play the AFC North, which unfortunately for you is one of the best divisions in the entire NFL. So that's going to be really tough for them to take on. You also have to play the NFC South, I believe, as well, which is Panthers, Tampa Bay, Saints, and Buccaneers. So did I say Buccaneers and Tampa Bay twice? I meant the Panthers, Buccaneers, Falcons, and Saints. Either way, though, it's going to have its fair share of tests. You have the Eagles, you have the Cowboys, you have the Ravens and Browns and Bengals and Steelers, and you also have like the Giants you're pretty even with, Carolina, the Titans. I couldn't think of the name for some reason. The Titans are there. The Saints are there. So Washington's going to have the opportunity to really shine. But at a certain point, I think it's going to be a long shot to win the division in year one, and you have a fairly difficult schedule too. So, getting to the record prediction, I have Washington going 4-13, and I'm not going to lie, this is pretty low compared to what you could have them getting. I think that they are going to be tested a lot, and again, some of these games can go either way. Like, they can totally beat Carolina. They can honestly beat Tampa Bay week one. You can definitely sweep the Giants. You could probably upset the Cowboys or Eagles once. So there's definitely games that can go either way. But I think at a certain point, the lack of experience and the lack of talent is going to really cap off just how many wins they can get. Because while, yes, you have some really talented guys like McLaurin and Daniels and Robinson, you have a lot of question marks, like the lack of wide receiver depth, like the secondary. So I think it's going to hurt you at a certain point. And you do have to play two pretty tough divisions. I wouldn't say the NFC South is tough, but I would say definitely the top two teams in there are, pretty tough, being the Buccaneers and the Saints. Buccaneers and the Falcons, sorry. So I think it's going to be a tough year for them. But I do think, though, if this year you go 4-13, but it's very clear that Jaden Daniels is the guy, I think next year gets to be really exciting because all of a sudden you know who to build around. You can be a believer in Dan Quinn if he has a great first year as head coach. And going 4-13, I mean, you can have the top pick in the draft again. Like, you could really take someone on that defensive side of the ball if the secondary struggles. Like, you could really have a bad year record-wise, but be very happy with the offensive production, and then go draft like Travis Hunter or Luther Burden III. Like, you can go get a really, really good defensive player in the draft. So for me, it's a year early for Washington to really compete with some of the bigger teams in the NFC. But if all goes right this year, they go through the draft, they get a top pick, they're active in free agency. I think next year you can really predict and take a huge jump. I'm just not doing it this year. If you're doing it this year, go for it. Project this team to get 10 wins. I personally don't see 10 wins on the roster, but at the same time, like I said, there's a lot of question marks all over the place. If everything goes right, they could really surprise people this year. So I don't want to bring any expectations down, because I think this team is very, very exciting. It's just a matter of what they will accomplish in the first season. So yeah, let me know down below what you guys think of the Commanders. That's just kind of my thoughts on them. I do hope they're really good this year. I love Jaden Daniels, so I'm excited to see how he does. Hopefully they get more wins than I thought, but I think this year is going to be fairly rough record-wise. But man, I think next year, if everything goes right this year, next year can be a huge leap for this team. All right, guys, the next team is going to be the Giants. Now, the Giants had a very disappointing 2023 season after being quite good in 2022. At the time of, I guess, last offseason, so a year ago, I was kind of sticking up for the Giants, saying that 2022 is not a fluke. They're going to come into 2023 and still be just as good. That did not happen. Starting week 1, it was very clear that team was just not what we saw in 2022. So, of course, you have a few different quarterbacks. Daniel Jones starts the season, but then goes down. While he played, he had 909 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. So then after that, you throw in Tyrod Taylor, or maybe it was DeVito next. I can't remember, but regardless, you put in Taylor at one point. He gets 1,341 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Then you put in DeVito, who gets 1,101 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. So statistically, DeVito was probably your most efficient quarterback. But again, that's not saying a ton. Rushing-wise, Saquon Barkley did his thing, 962 yards with 6 touchdowns. Daniel Jones also added 206 yards and 1 touchdown to his, I guess, passing yards. So, again, it was just not a good year. Receiving-wise, Darius Slayton, 770 yards and 4 touchdowns. You had Waller with 552 and 1 touchdown. He's since retired. He's not on the roster anymore. Wan'Dale Robinson, 525 and 1 touchdown. Then Saquon Barkley also had 280 and 4 touchdowns. And then also, let's get to Jalen Hyatt, who had 373 with no touchdowns. This team was very underwhelming, at least from what I thought they would look like going to last year after 2022. Everything that could have went wrong, and I think even for Daniel Jones, even if he stayed healthy, he wasn't playing well. I'm not going to say he couldn't have turned it around, but it was not what we saw in 2022 from Daniel Jones. Defensively, Bobby Okereke, I think, or Okereke, I can't remember how you say it. I think it's Okereke. He had 149 total tackles with 2 interceptions, so good year from him. Xavier McKinney had a good year as well, 3 interceptions, 116 total tackles. Deonte Banks, he did pretty well as well for a rookie cornerback. I think there's definitely some hope there with him. He had 2 interceptions on the season as well. And also, of course, best defensive tackle in the league with Dexter Lawrence II. So, again, it was a weird year, to say the least. I think defensively, there were some bright spots, more bright spots than on the offense, but it was just a painful year for Giants fans. So coming over to the 2024 depth chart, Daniel Jones is still your starting quarterback, and believe me, we will circle back to that. Devin Singletary running back, Malik Neighbors wide receiver 1, Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton, Daniel Bellinger as tight end, Jacob Johnson as fullback, Andrew Thomas as tackle, John Runyon as left guard, center is John Michael Schmitz Jr., right guard is Greg Van Rotten, and right tackle is Jermaine Illuminor. So let's just start with Daniel Jones. If you would have told me midway through last year that Daniel Jones would be their starter this year, I probably wouldn't have agreed with you. I would have honestly thought that they would have definitely moved on with him. Yes, he got injured and didn't get to play a full season, but he wasn't playing well. And why? Like, I think we've seen everything that Daniel Jones has to offer at this point. We know that he has a good rushing ability, but we also know that he's wildly inconsistent when passing the football. You don't know what you're going to get with Daniel Jones. Sometimes it might be a great game, other times it's like he hasn't played football past the age of 16 before. It's all over the place. So I am shocked that he's still the starter on this team. I think it is very unfortunate because the rest of the roster offensively is going to be hurt because he's still the quarterback on this team. And I know it's all probably pretty harsh, but like when you look at someone like Malik Neighbors, who is arguably the wide receiver one in the draft, with him, Marvin Harrison Jr., both very close for the top receiver in the draft. When you have someone of that skill set, it's disappointing because you have to think that he's not going to hit his potential with Jones on the roster. It's just not going to happen. Jones might be better with a receiver as good as Neighbors, but he is not a quarterback that's going to be able to consistently get the ball to Malik Neighbors and do it at a high level. Daniel Jones is just not the answer for that, in my opinion. It's just not going to happen. So that definitely sucks. And then you move down the depth chart at wide receiver, and Malik Neighbors and Darius Slayton are, in my opinion, the most reliable receivers you have, and one's even a rookie. Like Wan'Dale Robinson, I'm not a believer in. I think he's just a totally just mixed bag. You don't know what you're going to get there. Same with Jalen Hyatt, same with Isaiah Hodgins, same with Allen Robinson the second. Like, there seriously is not anyone on this roster at receiver other than Neighbors and Slayton that I can point to and go, oh, they're going to step up. Like, it's such a huge question mark for me that I don't know what to make of half the guys at receiver, because Robinson could be great, but like from what we've seen, and he always gets banged up, like can he really make that jump? Is that going to happen? Jalen Hyatt, is he, the speed's there, but like is he really there as a route runner? Can he be a starting NFL wide receiver number 2? I'm not really sold on that either. Hodgins had a great run at the end of 2022, but last year he was non-existent. So there's so many question marks because it's a lack of wide receiver depth paired with a below average quarterback. I think offense is going to be rough. I think it's going to be really rough. I mean, you have bright spots. You have Andrew Thomas. You have Malik Neighbors. You have even Tyron Tracy, the backup running back. He seems to have a great burst when he runs. Like, he seems to be pretty good. Devin Singletary is a serviceable running back at this point in his career. But other than that, there are so many question marks to me that it's really hard to evaluate what you're going to get from this offense. And unfortunately, you're not going to be able to evaluate a lot of players fairly because, in my opinion, there's going to be a lot of inconsistency at quarterback. I spent a lot of time there really bringing down the Giants offense. So let's move to the defense, where this team is actually really, really exciting. I like to be able to be more optimistic than pessimistic. And I cannot be optimistic about the Giants offense. I'm sorry. I love Malik Neighbors, but Daniel Jones angers me. Defensively, though, you have Dexter Lawrence II, who is probably the best defensive tackle in all of football, definitely in the top 2 or top 3. You add Brian Burns with a trade with Carolina. I think it's a great move. I think he definitely wanted a lot of money with the production that he's shown, but when you pair him on a line with Dexter Lawrence, and if Keon Thibodeau can step it up, him as well, then Burns might be able to really wreak some havoc, if that makes sense. Like, he'll be able to really produce because Lawrence is going to bring double teams, or he's going to draw double teams. His presence is going to be felt, so other guys can really capitalize off of the O-line. I mean, you can't guard everybody perfectly. Like, someone's going to have a weaker, spot to expose. So I think building the D-line up that much, it is very exciting for the Giants. Again, Keon Thibodeau last year, from what I've seen, statistically was much better than his first year. But from what I've seen also, it's like a lot of these sacks he got were like just, I don't want to say that they were like bad. Like, it wasn't like the guy like stumbled backwards into him. But I think Thibodeau did honestly benefit from like just the pass coverage, and he just got there and the court just didn't throw the ball away. I think that happened quite a few times. But at the same time, it's like you want a guy getting to the quarterback. Whether it takes too long or not, you want to see progression there. I think he has shown that. So if he takes another step this year, I think it'd be really good to see. If not, then it might be a little questionable still. But I think Thibodeau is definitely improving. The secondary, though, is where this team gets to be really, really interesting to me. So Deonte Banks and Drew Phillips are two huge guys to watch this year because I'm not really sure what to expect from either one of them. I think Banks had a solid rookie season, so I'm definitely watching him. Tyler Nubin, another one at safety. You lose Xavier McKinney, who is the best person in your secondary. You lose him in free agency to the Green Bay Packers, and that production has got to be probably not replaced. I'm not sure if you can really replace that 1 year unless Nubin really shines, but they've got to figure out something to where there isn't a massive hole at safety. I think they've at least tried to do that, like drafting Tyler Nubin. Whether that will happen for them in year one, I don't really know, and the Giants secondary really kind of brings me down a little bit on them. You still have Jason Pinnock there, though, at free safety, so you have talent on this roster, especially defensively. And one more thing, too, just about this team as a whole. is I think for this team to win games, it is going to require their defense to really slow down some of those high-powered offenses, because the Giants' offense, they're not going to be able to outscore probably anybody in this league. I don't think this is an offense that you can count on week in and week out to go in there and put up almost 30 points a game. I think it's going to be really, really rough offensively. But if this defense can cause the other team's offense to get out of sync, to just discombobulate things on their end, the Giants can definitely win some of those close fights. So it's just a matter of if that actually happens or not, which again, I don't know how that's going to go. But I think the talent on the defense is definitely there for it to go that way. All right, so once again, to go to my list of players, not everyone's going to be on there. Just to clear that up again. But yeah, going to that list of players, though, again, I've already kind of hit on a few of these guys, but I still think I want to go over them, of course. And Daniel Jones, who I already kind of said a lot about, is, of course, on here. And I gave him the question mark. Daniel Jones is unproven because Daniel Jones has shown that he can play at a high level, but he's also shown that he can play at a very low level. And there's not really any way of knowing which one you're going to get. It can really go either way. So that's why I have him as unproven, because who knows what you're getting with Daniel Jones. In my opinion, this has to be his last year. You have to cut your losses. Yes, you gave him the money, but you have to move on if you want this team to succeed. So that is why I can't see him being on this roster past this year. But again, I've said that before, and he's still here. So Jones has a question mark. He is unproven. I gave Tyrone Tracy the eyes, though. I mentioned him briefly, but he has a lot of talent there, backup running back. He can be a big player for them down the stretch, especially paired with Devin Singletary. Malik Nabers is the star, though. I think he will absolutely be a star in year one. I think he is the reason that Giants fans are still excited for this team on offense. Despite the other issues, Malik Nabers' talent is undeniable. He has such a high ceiling in the NFL. Just give this guy a quarterback, and then we can really see what he can do. So yeah, that's why he has the star. And then Jalen Hyatt has the eyes. And again, I'm not going to rule him out. I think he's a talented player. But when you have a quarterback situation as shaky as they have right now, I'm not sure whether I'm going to go with like a, great outlook on Hyatt. I think he would need a much better quarterback to kind of help him out. But again, who knows? Maybe Hyatt takes a huge step. I'm not ruling out, so I have the player to watch on him. But then defensively, Brian Burns is a star. I think he can absolutely be a star on this defense. I think he was a star in Carolina. I see no reason why he wouldn't be a star in the Giants defense with better guys around him. Dexter Lawrence, of course, has a gem who is top 5. Well, I have it as top 5-ish. It's like top 5 to maybe 7 or 8 in the league, but he's top 3, top 1. So he, of course, has the gem. Keon Thibodeau, I gave the eyes to. Again, I still think Burns is the better player. That's why I gave him the star. I think Thibodeau can still have a great season, but I'd like to see him replicate what he just did last season again, but more efficiently. So I guess why I gave him the eyes. And then Deonte Banks, I gave the eyes to as well in year 2. I think he's something that can step up huge for them in the secondary because they're going to need it. You lost Xavier McKinney. Who knows if Newbin will be the answer in year 1 or at all. So someone's got to step up there. I think Banks is an exciting player, and that's why I have him with the eyes. So the Giants, they have exciting players. They have bright spots on this team. It's just the spot that you really hate to watch happens to be one of the most important in all of football, and that's quarterback. So it's just a very unfortunate situation, but man, they do have some really exciting guys in this roster. So coming back here to go back to that chart I made before, I have the Giants offense pretty low, and it's because of Daniel Jones. I think if Daniel Jones could just turn things around, I think he could be really, really good, because he showed he could be really, really good, but I don't think he's going to turn things around. So if he does, then the offensive ceiling goes way higher, because now all of a sudden you pair 2022 Daniel Jones with Malik Nabers. I mean, that could be an awesome connection. But from what we've seen, majority of his career and even just in preseason so far this season, I don't think he's the answer. I think it's going to be a rough year, unfortunately. Find Malik Nabers a quarterback, and then we can all get really, really excited. Defensively, they'll have the ceiling for them being very, very high up there. I think it's a really good defense. It will keep them in games. I think I'm going to say majority of the Giants' wins this season will be because the defense kept them in close games. I don't think this team blows anybody out, but I do think they can win some close games. I think it'll be because of that defense. So very high ceiling there. Overall, though, I have this team being pretty low. And to come back over to just the depth chart, I'm going to switch over to the actual schedule now. And right now, looking at this, it's of course the same as Washington. You have to play the AFC North, you have to play the NFC South, and it's tough. It's a tough matchup for a team that has a huge question mark at quarterback, because when you play the AFC North, you are playing defenses like the Ravens, like the Bengals, like the Browns, and the Steelers. And I don't know how those games are going to go for the Giants, but picturing Daniel Jones struggling against the Texans' second string in preseason gives me a pretty good idea of how that might go against some of the best defenses in the entire NFL. They have winnable games in this roster, though. You have Carolina, you have Washington, you have, well, maybe not more than that. You can claw for wins against teams like the Buccaneers, like the Saints, like maybe even the Seahawks or the Vikings week 1. You have games you can make close and get wins, but if we're going to sit here and say that they have opportunity to, be the favorite in really any of these, I don't think that would be true, unfortunately. And despite all that, I do actually have them finishing a game above the Commanders. Now, just to be clear, I gave the Giants a couple of those tough wins I was talking about. I gave them a win over the Buccaneers. I gave them a win in Pittsburgh. That is really the extent that I can see them upsetting teams. And the reason I have them a game above Washington is because that Giants defense. The Giants defense has a not just like high ceiling for the team, high ceiling like league wide for defenses. It can be one of the better defenses in the NFL. So I definitely have to respect that, because with a defense that good, you're going to stay in games. But I think a lot of those really close ones might not go their way, and that's why they don't have a lot of wins. I think the Commanders definitely have the higher ceiling as a team this year, but I think they have more question marks because they have question marks on offense and a lot on defense. The Giants have a lot on offense. They don't have as many question marks on defense. So, having being the better team by one game, I had them losing games like, in Philadelphia. I have the Ravens coming to New York and winning. I have them losing to Cincinnati in New York. I have them beating the Panthers, though, and the Panthers come to New York, and they split with the Commanders and get, again, an upset win there in Pittsburgh. But I think it's going to be a rough start to the season. I think if you could just beat the Vikings and the Commanders and the Seahawks in that area of the first, 6-7 losses, whatever I gave them right there, that could look a lot better. You could be 3-4 instead of 0-7, and that would be huge for them. But I don't see it happening, to be honest. So again, if you're a Giants fan, let me know down below what you think. I know it's got to be tough because I wouldn't think you're believing in Daniel Jones, but if you are, then let me know why, because I'm open to believing in him. But I believed in him last year, and that did not go well for me. And history just kind of shows us that Daniel Jones probably is not going to be a starter in the NFL for a whole lot longer. As for the Giants, just go strut with that defense and have Malik Neighbors shine. And then at the end of the year, make some kind of move at quarterback. Daniel Jones is holding this team back. But yeah, over to the next team. All right, guys, the next up is the Cowboys. Now, this is a much better team than the teams we just had to talk about. They had a very good season, but really fell flat in the playoffs, unfortunately. Lost first round to a first-year starting quarterback in Dallas. Not the way he wanted to end off 2023. Passing-wise, though, Dak had a great year. He had 4,516 yards with 36 touchdowns, only 9 receptions. I mean, Dak Prescott was a top 5 quarterback last year, and it's still mind-blowing to me the seasons he can put together and just not perform in the playoffs. It's so bizarre to me. Rushing-wise, Pollard had 1,005 rushing yards with 6 touchdowns. A bit underwhelming from what I think his projections really were, but, still a solid year. Dowdle had 361 and 2 touchdowns last year, though. So, again, other than Pollard, there wasn't much of a rushing attack. Although, for what it's worth, Dak had 242 with 2 more touchdowns there, too. And then receiving-wise, CeeDee Lamb, 1,749 receiving yards, 12 touchdowns. There is basically a 1,000-yard difference between him and the guy in second with receiving yards. Ferguson was second with 761 and 5 touchdowns. Brandon Cooks, 657 and 8 touchdowns. And Gallup, 418 and 2 touchdowns. Again, it was a great year for Dallas, just didn't amount to anything. And then defensively, of course, as you have a very good defense. Unfortunately, Trevon Diggs went down with that torn ACL, but without him, you were still very, very competitive. Deron Bland literally setting the record for the most pick sixes in a single season. So that was very cool to see him kind of, make history there. He had 209 yards on interception. Just kind of funny to see that number there. But yeah, other than that, of course, you have Micah Parsons doing his things. Played all 17 games. 60, was it 60? No, I'm looking at the wrong guy. 64 total tackles, and he also had 14 sacks to go along with that. Stephon Gilmore also played pretty good football for you, but he is now, not on the teams on the Vikings, so you lose him. But regardless, the Cowboys still have a very, very good defense, and it is still one of the better teams in the NFL. So as for the depth chart, you have Dak Prescott quarterback and Ezekiel Elliott back in Dallas at running back, and we will come back to that for sure. CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver, Brandon Cooks, and Jalen Tolbert are your 3 wide receivers. Jake Ferguson, tight end. Tyler Guyton, left tackle. Tyler Smith, left guard. Brock Hoffman, center. Zach Martin, right guard. And Terrence Steele, right tackle. Let's go back to Zeke. So to go to Zeke, for Dallas, what really holds me back on this team is running back. And it's bizarre to me because Zeke leaves for a year, goes to New England, leads the team in receptions, and just casually comes back to Dallas a year later. Absolutely bizarre, but, he's back. Iconic player for Dallas. But it's weird because I'm not really understanding the plan at running back because you let Pollard walk. Like, okay, yeah, but you didn't really do anything. Like, you didn't really replace that production, or at least attempt to replace it. Zeke's solid, but he's not, I don't think, going to be in the top half of running backs this year at this point in his career. I don't think Rico Dowdle would be there either. So what holds me back from Dallas a lot is the running back room. I don't know how good their running game is going to be. And of course, again, they don't really care. I think they like to be able to air it out. They like to be able to throw the ball. But it's still just, you have to have some sort of run game, you would think. But I don't think Dallas really has that. Then to CeeDee Lamb, just pay him. Just pay him. I don't understand. It's a lot of money, but look at this roster. What is this team without CeeDee Lamb? You have no running back room. Just pretend CeeDee's not there. Pretend he's not on the screen. Where else is the ball going? I guess Jake Ferguson. And Brandon Cooks. It's just pay CeeDee Lamb, get it out of the way. I don't understand why that's even going on. Again, it's easier said than actually done when it comes to striking a deal. But still, he's your top receiver. He's the top receiver in the league. It's got to get done. CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert. I think it's a solid wide receiver trio. But again, you have to have Lamb on the field. Tyler Guyton seems to be the real deal for the rookie tackle. So excited about that for him since you went ahead and lost. And I can't remember who you lost at tackle, but you lost someone at tackle. I'm not sure why that name won't come to me. But you have Tyler Guyton there now. Jake Ferguson, though, is someone that can really, really take a huge step this season. He was already great last season, and he still, I think, is only going to get better. I think Dak utilizes him pretty well. And Dak is just, he's a good quarterback. He gets a lot of jokes out of it. He is a good quarterback. Why that does not translate to the playoffs is beyond me, but he is a good quarterback. This is a good offensive roster, and I think the Cowboys are a good team. Defensively, of course, you have Micah Parsons there. You have DeMarcus Lawrence still there. Mozzie Smith in his second year there. One of your only moves all offseason was bringing in Eric Kendricks, so that's cool, I guess, at this point in his career. Diggs back and healthy, though, which is what's really big for you. You need Trayvon Diggs back and healthy. He's a huge piece of that defense. It looks like there's no question mark or anything around him, so hopefully he's cleared for off-ball activities now. You have Diggs there. Deron Bland still there after setting history last season. And again, it's a Dallas defense that's going to compete. They're going to be really good. Yeah, you lose Stephon Gilmore, but it's still a great defense. Gilmore played great football for him. You lose Dan Quinn, you lose your offensive coordinator, but looking at this on paper, Dallas should still have a very, very good defense. In my opinion, they still do. And they are once again, I want to say they're a Super Bowl contender, but maybe we'll just call it a divisional round contender. Let's just see if they can make it to the second round this year. Getting to the Cowboys players here, so Dak Prescott has the gem. I do think Dak Prescott's a top 5 to 6, 7 quarterback in the NFL. He's definitely around there. Zeke I gave the eyes to because I have no idea what to expect from him this season. He's a player to watch. He's good, he's solid, but starting running back, it's definitely interesting. CeeDee Lamb, of course, has the gem there for wide receiver. Jake Ferguson, I gave the starter to. I think he can definitely be a star in not almost in year one. I think he'll definitely be a star this season, though. I think he was a star last year, and I think he'll be a star again this year. Tyler Guyton there at tackle, I gave the eyes to, but you could probably argue giving him a star in year 1, too. I think he's going to be awesome for him. I think it was a great move to get him, so big move there. Then defensively, once again, not a lot of people I threw on here, but Parsons has the gem, of course. Trayvon Diggs has a star, and Bland has a star. I think it go either way. I'm excited to see, hopefully, a full healthy season for both Diggs and Bland. I'm excited to see that duo there in the secondary. And once again, Dallas is a great team. I don't have as much to say about them because there's not as many question marks. Yeah, there's coaching changes and a few roster changes, but it's still a very well-rounded team that's going to compete at a very high level. So coming back here, just to go ahead and jump to the chart, I have both very high up there. I think that, yeah, you do lose Tony Pollard. You're going to lose a little bit of that burst at running back, but you still have a guy that's at least familiar with the system with Zeke. I mean, you still have a good running back. I wouldn't say great. For me, you got to pay CeeDee Lamb. Like, you have to pay CeeDee Lamb. It all really runs through him. You have to have him on the field, or I'm not sure what this team's going to look like. So get Lamb on the field, pay him. And this team will be very, very good once again. I think they are definitely competing for the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl and everything, but it has to translate to the playoffs. And I don't usually kind of project the Cowboys to go very far in the playoffs. And I used to, and actually, no, even just last year, I was kind of like, you know what? I think this is really Dallas' year. They've shown that they can be the best in the NFL. And once again, they fell flat. So I hope they prove me wrong. I hope Dak proves me wrong, to be honest. But yeah, but regardless, though, regardless of playoffs, still a very good offense and a very good defense. And coming over to the schedule, this is a good schedule for Dallas. I think you're in a division that is a two-team race for first place, in my opinion, with the Cowboys and the Eagles competing for that. You have to play, of course, the AFC North, which is pretty tough, and the NFC South, which is, I think, definitely below you for the most part. I think the Falcons will give you the best game, but you can handle Carolina, you can handle Tampa Bay, you can handle the Saints. Other than that, though, they do have teams like the Lions, like the 49ers, like the Texans. You have, of course, the Eagles, you have the Browns, you have the Ravens. So the Cowboys will be tested, but they are one of the best in the NFL. I think they're built for that. They're good enough to win those games. So I do think that, yes, it's going to be a interesting season to see how the offense operates with not a strong run game. But we've seen how good Dak and CD can be. I think it's going to be a top offense in the NFL regardless. I think in my rankings, I had them at like top 10 or 11. I can't remember where I had them, but around there. So I think it's a good team. Let's get into my actual record prediction. So for their record, I had them going 10-7, which might be a little low to where some people might have them, but this is a tough schedule. I don't want to gloss over that. I actually had them losing week 1 to the Browns as well. I think the Browns are a great team. I think they actually win that game. I gave them a lot of those wins, though, either in close games or when they're home, kind of like the Bengals, who should be very competitive, but they're in Dallas. I kind of gave that one to Dallas. Same with the Eagles. I had them splitting there, beating the Falcons in Atlanta, but I think they lose their fair share, too. I think they lose to the Ravens in Dallas. I think they lose to the 49ers in San Francisco. I think they lose to Houston and the Lions, both in Dallas. I think that there's going to be games where teams are going to come into their place and beat them because I think those teams play at a very high level. Again, some of these can go either way, though, because I gave the Steelers an upset. That one could go the other way. Houston could go the other way, and all of a sudden you're 12-5. So I understand people predicting the Cowboys to have a better record than 10-7, but I think 10-7 is still very, very good. I think they are a playoff team. I do think that they can make the playoffs in the NFC. I don't think they're going to have some big fall off. I think they're going to struggle in the running game, but and maybe some depth at wide receiver, but as long as you have CeeDee Lamb on the field, it's going to be a very tough offense to stop. And yeah, Cowboys 10-7. I think they're in for a good year, but let's see if they can actually make it count when it actually matters this year. I know that one was pretty short, but I mean, for Cowboys fans, it's because I don't have a lot to really kind of speculate. It's a well-rounded team. They do a lot of things right. Just get CeeDee on the field, and you're looking really good. So I have the Cowboys win 10-7 this year. It's definitely win now mode. No sort of evaluate quarterback and this and that. No, go win. It's just you got to go win the games now. So, yeah, over to the final team. And, of course, the final team is the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I am pretty high on the Eagles this year. I think last season was very underwhelming for the Eagles. I think it was a bit of a regression from what we saw in 2022. And, again, I think a lot of that was due to coaching. I think Brian Johnson was not a good offensive coordinator. I think a lot of the play calling was very strange and just kind of out of sync. I don't know. It was not good. The Eagles really imploded at the end of last year. But I think this year is a bounce back year. I think they've done a lot of things right to ensure that this year is better than last year. So we'll get to the brief recap of 2023 first. Jalen Hurts threw for 3,858 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions. He also ran for 605 with 15 touchdowns. So again, I know a lot of those were within like the 1-2 yard line. They pushed them, but again, statistically, very, very good. Passing wise, though, not the level that he proved he can play at. So not the same there. Again, I think a lot of that is due to coaching, but he himself also just did not play as well as we've seen him be able to play. And then down to rushing as well. DeAndre Swift, 1,049 yards, 5 touchdowns. Solid year from him, but he's not on the roster anymore. He is now in Chicago. Then receiving wise, A.J. Brown, 1,456 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. Devontae Smith, 1,066 and 7 touchdowns. Dallas Goedert, 592 and 3 touchdowns. And then Swift also had 214 and 1 touchdown in the air as well. Again, plenty of weapons on this team. And now you just added Jahan Dotson as of today too. So there's a lot of skill on this team. There's a lot of talent. It just comes down to it all coming together. And I think Kellen Moore being brought in as the offensive coordinator this season will really help just everything. Because last season, it could have been better. And then defensively, the big thing for me was Jalen Carter, who had a phenomenal first season. He had 6 sacks, but 33 total tackles. And I feel like they used to... Okay, yeah, it's right there, tackle for loss. He had 8 tackles for loss, so really good rookie season from him. Reed Blankenship still back there in the secondary. Darius Slade still back there in the secondary, although they did get some new guys that we'll talk about in a minute there for that secondary. So, again, the Eagles are a good team. They definitely lost some guys, though, namely Hassan Reddick, who's now, well, technically in the Jets, but not showing up to anything, I guess. So, I don't know, kind of strange. But Eagles defense, I think, will be much better this year as well. Getting to the depth chart, Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, obviously the big name for this year that they added. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and now Jahan Dotson. So, again, it's a good receiving core. I mean, it really, really is. Dallas Goedert, and then O-line, Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, Mekhi Becton, and Lane Johnson. Let's just start with Jalen Hurts. I think that last year, things were just not good for him on the field, and then also the coaching just made everything, I think, just 3 times worse. I think he is a good quarterback. He is my dark horse, for MVP this year. That's how high I really am on the Eagles. I think the coaching change will do that much. Adding Saquon Barkley, a running back that can really do it all in the rushing game and the receiving game, I think is huge for this offense. You still have Kenneth Gainwell and then also Will Shipley, the rookie, who has proven to be pretty good, in my opinion. So far, from what we've seen in camp and preseason, he's shown some good flashes. A.J. Brown, of course, is wide receiver 1, but Devontae Smith, is a great wide receiver 2. I mean, he's really, really good. And you add Jahan Dotson to the mix. This is a good wide receiver trio. You have Paris Campbell there. You have John Ross there, who, maybe he's more of a special teams guy. I don't really know. Really, really fast. But, again, there are plenty of weapons on this team. You have a good O-line. You lose Jason Kelce, of course. It's really impossible to fill that kind of, literally, all-time best production. But, again, I think it's still a good O-line. But seriously, Jalen Hurts is my dark horse to win MVP this year, because when you add guys like Saquon Barkley to this team, and now even Jahan Dotson, Jahan Dotson, maybe he needed a fresh start. Maybe Washington, being wide receiver 2 was too big of a role for him. He gets to come in here now. Nothing is going to be asked of him. He's a wide receiver 3. They can look elsewhere to Paris Campbell if they need a better 3 in there. I think Dotson can do much better now that he's in Philadelphia. I'm not sure if he will, but I think the opportunity for him to be better is definitely there. So for me, Hurts has a plethora of weapons, from A.J. Brown to Devontae Smith to Saquon Barkley, Jahan Dotson, Goddard. You could argue even Paris Campbell back there too. So again, I think it'll be a great season for them in offense. You add Kellen Moore as offensive coordinator. I think this will come together really nicely for them. Defensively, so obviously the secondary was a little rough for them last year at times, and they made sure to address that. You brought in C.J. Gardner-Johnson from the Lions after he left the Eagles the year prior, so he took a 1-year break basically in Detroit and then came back. Huge addition. You also draft Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo, and then you also draft Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. Although DeJean hurt, I think, his hamstring, I'm not sure how long he's out for, or if he's still hurt, but I know he actually did suffer that injury a couple weeks ago. D-line, you have guys like Jalen Carter now going to year 2. You still have Jordan Davis there. You add Bryce Huff from the Jets. I think it's a great addition too. So you have a lot of weapons on this team. You add Devin White too. This team, I think, is so well-rounded from offense and defense both, that if the coaching can click more, I think this team can really go back to the Super Bowl. And I think that because of the depth that they've added, you don't have to really panic last year, because they were very thin in the secondary last year. This year, though, you have Quinyon Mitchell, who, he could be Defensive Rookie of the Year, in my opinion. I think he's going to be a day 1 starter. I think he's going to be very good in day 1 as well. You have Cooper DeJean still. Reed Blankenship still back there. Darius Slay still back there. I know James Bradbury is not seen in the best light by Eagles fans, but he is still back there for depth. Sidney Brown's still back there, though he's currently out. Avonte Maddox still back there as well. So the Eagles, in my opinion, have some great starters. They have good depth, and it's a very well-rounded team. So looking at the Eagles offense, I gave A.J. Brown and Saquon Barkley the gem, who are both top 5 to 6 to 7 at their respective positions in the entire NFL. I gave the rookie running back Will Shipley the eyes as a player to watch. He's shown a lot of nice flashes. I'd like to see him with some opportunities this year and see what he can really do. And then, of course, as of today, you add Jahan Dotson. So, again, another player to watch. I'm not sure how he'll do in Philadelphia, but fresh start, better team. Maybe it's what he needed. I don't know. Then defensively, I gave Jalen Carter and Quinn Mitchell the star. I think Mitchell will be a star in year one. I think they need a corner. They went and they got themselves a corner. I think it was a great pick. I'm excited to see him. Jalen Carter is great, or he was great in year one. He's going to be even better in year two, so I gave him the star there as well. And then Bryce Huff and Cooper DeJean gave the eyes to. Not sure what DeJean's impact will be in year one, but I did give him the eyes because he does have the talent to make a huge impact in year one. And same with Bryce Huff. Again, he showed some great things there in New York. I'm not sure how big of a player he'll be in Philadelphia, but he's on the roster. He's a starting player right now, so I had to at least give him the eyes there. But yeah, Eagles, a lot of players to watch, a lot of talent on this roster. I think they can be really, really good this year. And then jumping right into the chart, I gave the offense S tier, the highest they can possibly be. I think it's going to be really, really good this year. Definitely better than last year. I gave the defense a high A, like A+. I think it'll be very good, but more around that A range. I think it'll be a step up from last year. Maybe a few question marks, but still a very well-rounded team. And then overall, A+. I think they're going to be a great team. I really do. They're one of my teams that I'm very high on this year. One of like 5 that I'm like really, really big on. I think the Eagles did a lot of things right this past offseason. I'm a believer in Jalen Hurts, and they are still obviously making moves to try and win now, even just after today getting Jahan Dotson. And so then jumping right into their record from there, I had them going 12-5. I actually think they lose week 1 against the Packers. That's that international game, I believe, in South America, which would be very cool to see. So I had them losing that, but going on a bit of a win streak after that, losing the Bengals there in Cincinnati. Some of these, if you've watched my entire series of doing this for all the divisions, some of these games I've changed my mind on as the years go, as the offseason's gone on. So if you watched like my Bengals game and I had them losing to the Eagles, but now I have them winning, I just happened to change my mind on it. The overall record prediction is still what I'm trying to get as accurate as possible, if that makes sense. Like I'm trying to get the 12-5 the most accurate. So some of the games might be a little bit different across the entire series, but for the most part, it should all be the same for each team. But yeah, I had them losing the Bengals, beating the Jaguars. I mean, again, the teams I had them losing to are teams I think are really, really good. I don't really have them getting upset, which might not be the most realistic. Because of course, I mean, I'm sure they'll be upset at least at some point this year. So maybe they lose in Washington toward the end of the season, or maybe they lose against Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay. But regardless, I'm going 12-5. The Eagles are a favorite team of mine this year to really be really, really good. I think they will be with the coaching changes. I think we've seen just how good this roster can be. And I think they've only improved from last season, other than losing Jason Kelce, of course. So for me, that's all I have to really say about the Eagles. It's just win now mode. You did great in the offseason. You added guys like Saquon Barkley. You drafted the pieces you needed with Quinn Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, even a potential great backup running back with Will Shipley. So I'm very happy with what the Eagles have done so far. I'm very high on them this year, and I have them winning the NFC East. If you guys enjoyed the video, though, be sure to subscribe down below. It is free, it takes just a second, and really, really helps me out. I would really appreciate it on the road to 1,000 subscribers. I believe we're about 8, I think, away from 700, so I would appreciate just taking the time, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I would really appreciate that. Let me know down below what you guys think about the NFC East, who you have winning, and why. Next will be the AFC East, and then that will be in just a day or so, and then next week we'll finish up by doing the NFC West and the AFC West. So thank you guys for watching. I do really appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.